exactly the winter solstice. That means last night was the longest night of the year. And from now on, every day has a little more light. It's like we've turned the corner. It's not going to get worse than this. Dark is necessary. Dark has its own gifts. But just like green plants, we humans turn toward the light. We blossom in the light. The sun is literally the source of life on Earth. And every culture everywhere on the planet celebrates this day of turning, unless they've completely divorced themselves from the natural world, which does happen in pockets, and it's very sad. But we're going to look at it this morning because it bears on our topic. We don't know exactly what the old solstice celebrations look like, but we know that was an important day because all over the world, cultures left structures that are still standing, that are perfectly aligned to the sun on exactly the winter solstice. I think there's one in Chaco Canyon, isn't there? Yeah. The one we're going to talk about this morning is in Ireland. It's called Newgrange, and I'll bet some of you have been there. Yeah? Yeah? It's a gigantic mound of earth, basically, it's a passage tomb, so they buried people in there. It's a long, straight passage that's not terribly tall, into a central chamber that's right under the high point of the mound, has a tall ceiling. And there are side passages and niches where people have been buried, and those skeletons have all been unearthed and taken care of appropriately, because this is a huge tourist site now. I mean, that's an important thing to understand. This structure predates Stonehenge and the pyramids in Giza. It's 5,200 years old. That's a lot of solstices. Yeah. When I visited here some years ago, they took us all the way into that central vaulted area. We could see symbols carved all along the passageway, spirals and chevrons, and that thing they call the triskelion, which is what Jim's amulet is. It's the 3 spirals connected. Very, very Celtic, very Celtic. And the carvings are all over the place. Once we were all, our little group was all in the middle, they turned the lights off. It's really dark underground. Yep. But above the entrance door is they call it the roof box, but it's like a transom window. It's just a small aperture that lets in light, and that's where the sun comes through on the solstice. So they've rigged up a light bulb out there to, on the off days, to mimic the sun. So there we are sitting in the dark, and somebody flicks a switch, and down that passageway comes the light from the light bulb, and sure enough, lights up the whole inner chamber. It's pretty impressive, actually, because that passageway is kind of long. What I hadn't realized until I got started reading online about the activities just this week is that the modern observance of the solstice continues. There's actually a lottery for 60 places, 60 people, to be in that central chamber on the solstice. Oh, wow, yeah. Okay, so if you happen to have one of the winning lottery tickets, you show up at 3 or 4 in the morning in the dark. We're going in, no talking, no lights, no phones, no nothing. You got to feel your way down the passage because the light from the outside, the starlight, only penetrates a little ways. Get into that, all the way into that central passage. Find a place to sit, because this is going to be a little while. And sure enough, at dawn, the first rays of the sun come through that roof box and start down the passageway. It's not instant. It takes a couple minutes for it to move down the passageway. When it gets to the central chamber, the whole thing lights up. And then it takes about 17 minutes for the sun to move across the back wall of the central chamber before it starts to ebb. It moves back up the passageway as the sun gets higher and higher, and the direct sunlight can't get all the way down. It runs into the walls first. It's pretty cool. It's actually pretty cool. Hundreds of generations of human beings have done this, have been in the chamber to welcome the sun on this day. And trying to imagine the emotion that you had, especially in pre-literate times when everybody was close to the natural world, and there might have been some question in their mind about whether the sun was going to come back or not. So the reassurance of having it show up on schedule, the light to come down the passageway just the way it's supposed to, they must have just gone, it's okay. Life as we know it will continue because the sun is there. The sun has returned. So, we're going to have a discussion about this next sentence. I think it's not a surprise that the early church chose December 25th, a date near the solstice, on which to celebrate Jesus' birthday. It merges beautifully with an observance that already has everybody in a good mood, right? We're coming out of darkness. And the early church didn't know exactly when Jesus was born, right? When Jesus was born, nobody knew he was going to grow up to be somebody. And when he did, then they had to go back and, whoa, we need a birth narrative here, which is why we have more than one, because they were constructed after the fact. Matthew tells us that the Annunciation happened by God talking to Joseph in a dream, and Mary has nothing to say. If you read the Annunciation in Luke, we have the angel Gabriel coming to Mary only, and she sings the Magnificat. And we cheerfully just merge it all together, because it's all Christmas to us, right? We're not asking for logic. We want the familiar. We want the continuity. But the date itself, I mean, it wasn't like there was a hall of records in Nazareth where you could go look up his birth certificate. They didn't do that then. But I think it was brilliant that they chose a date so close to the solstice, because you already had a celebration, and it was a good one, and it made everybody feel good. So let's just do birthday at the same time. Besides, think of the metaphors. Light coming out of darkness, arise and shine. See, you already had the Old Testament at the point in time when the gospel writers are trying to describe this. And Matthew, in fact, keeps going back to the Old Testament in the creation, his version of the birth narrative, because he's speaking to the Jews in the synagogue who are Jesus believers, but they are also Jewish, and so they know the Old Testament, that is their sacred text, and they want the connection. Jesus is in continuity with the Old Testament. So Matthew's one who quotes from the Hebrew Bible repeatedly in his narratives about Jesus, and sometimes even stretches things a little bit. For example, there is a line, I think it's in Isaiah, that says, "And a young woman shall give birth, and you will call his name Emmanuel, God with us." But that's pretty close. The point is, the Hebrew word that's used for young woman is alma, which literally means young woman. It does not mean virgin. It's probably likely most young women were virgins because it was bad news if you weren't, but nowhere in the Old Testament does it say, and a virgin shall give birth to this child. You know, but that's what Matthew goes back to because that's what his audience knows. So, but the thing about it, you can study and study and study and deconstruct this stuff, and in the end, you set up the creche with the shepherds and the wise men from two different gospel stories, and they're all there together, and it doesn't matter, right? They've all come because this is an important birth, even if we didn't know it was important at the time. The specific traditions that we observe around Christmas depend enormously on where you live. If you happen to be in Sweden, you've got Santa Lucia festivals, right? Lovely young girls in white with a wreath and candles, and all the mothers are going, oh God, please don't drop that because it's going to burn, and you know. But they do it, it's great. If you're in Mexico, we have posadas. Yeah. If you're in England, there are going to be boy choirs and music everywhere. Those are, you know, the cultural combination with the Bible story. Americans draw a lot on what our founders brought with them from Western Europe, which is why we cheerfully sing about bleak midwinters and the snow lay on the ground, and even though we look outside and it's not that bleak, it's 60s, right? It's not terrible out there, and we never have snow in San Mateo, do we? It doesn't matter. We don't look for logic at this time of year. We look for connection and continuity, and it's the same desire for continuity that the solstice observers had. The reason they keep going back to that chamber year after year, continuity. The stories we tell at Christmas time invariably involve someone being kind, unusually kind to someone else. The season brings that out. In many ways, I think we're closer to living the way Jesus intended at Christmas time than we are the rest of the year. I mean, it's not an accident that Scrooge says at the end of A Christmas Carol, I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. God, it would be a different world if everybody behaved all the time the way they do when they're getting all excited about Christmas. So, what would it mean to keep Christmas all the year? Well, we'd have to leave the banners up, you know, but we wouldn't take them down. Hope, peace, joy, and love, but especially love. Love is more than just a feeling. Love is a practice, an all-year kind of practice, an all-life kind of practice. It's sort of analogous to Jack Kornfield's book about enlightenment, right? When the title of it is After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. One of his points in there is that no one stays at the top of one of those mountaintop peak experiences, a transcendent moment. You don't stay there, you come out of it, and hopefully it's wonderful while it lasts, and hopefully you bring something with you out of that experience. So when you come back down the mountain, the work is lighter, it's more joyous, it's still laundry, right? It's still laundry, but you approach it differently. There's an old Zen proverb that says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Maybe with a different attitude. maybe with a different attitude. So love in many ways is like that, whether it's the love of a person or a group or a skill like music. There are moments of amazing highs, and in between, there's a lot of laundry. I mean, you can love playing the piano, for example. You can experience just incredible highs getting caught up in the music, but you still practice every day, pretty nearly every day. You run your scales, you play your Czerny exercises, you keep your fingers limber, you keep your mental attitude where it needs to be. The practice is part of your total experience of your love of music. You can't look at a piano without the practice and say, oh, I love to play. I never sit down at the piano, but I love it. People would go, little disconnect there. There will always be practice. And the question is, what is your attitude when you sit down to play your scales and your Czerny exercises and the 89th time you've been through this piece that you're going to perform? What is your attitude toward the laundry? You have choice in your attitude toward the scales, toward the laundry, toward life in general. And one of those choices is love. We sing, every once in a while we get to sing our anniversary song. Have you noticed how many long-lived relationships there are in this church? I've never met so many people who've actually celebrated 50 years of marriage, or it's next year, it's close. That's really pretty astounding. It bespeaks a tremendous commitment and people who have figured out that to stay in love with the same partner for 50 years requires the attitude that says, this is for the long term. This is a practice. It's not just a few highs here. It's a practice. It's choosing over and over to care, to make someone else's happiness a priority for you, to give of yourself. And of course, your choices over time create your life. What's that lovely line, Marilyn? As you spend your hours, so you spend your life. Yeah, right. Marilyn and I both like this quote, but we can never remember it. But it's the idea that minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, the choices you make and the attitudes you carry, that is your life. 150 years ago, the Scottish writer and minister Henry Drummond wrote a little book. You've probably seen it, called The Greatest Thing in the World. And in it, he said, you will find, as you look back on your life, that the moments when you have truly lived are the moments when you have done things in the spirit of love. So that's the message this morning. Choose love. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's on the back, actually. Even better than that, I gave it to you on the back of the bulletin. You will find, as you look back on your life, that the moments when you have truly lived are the moments when you have done things in the spirit of love.
Yes.
So, well, what thoughts do you guys have about this topic? Love is a practice. No?
Well, I love the idea of love as a practice. I think it's a great idea. We should keep it up.
And we should keep it up. Yeah.